God's kids say and do the funniest things. These are answers given by second graders in a Catholic school to the following questions. Why did God make mothers? First one said, to help us out of her stomach when we were getting born. She's the only one who knows the way out. A second one said, she's the only one who knows where the Scotch tape is. How did God make mothers? One said he used dirt just like the rest of us. But another one said magic plus superpowers and a lot of string. What ingredients are mothers made of? God made mothers out of clouds and angels' hair and everything in the world, and then added, and just a dab of mean. They had to get their start from men's bones, but mostly they used string, I think. Why did your mom marry your dad? One said, my dad makes the best spaghetti in the world, and my mom eats a lot. Another one said, my grandma says mom didn't have her thinking cap on. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? She has this weird thing about me keeping my room clean. I'd get rid of that. I'd make my mom smarter. Then she would know that it was my sister who did it and not me. And finally, I would like her to get rid of those invisible eyes in the back of her head. And with that, a happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers and grandmothers and godmothers, stepmothers, birth mothers, and anyone with any maternal instincts. God bless you all. Today I'm continuing the homily series on fire, stories of the early church. And I want to look a little more closely at the first letter of St. Peter, specifically one verse of that, 1 Peter 3, verse 15, where Peter says, always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks you for a reason for your hope. Always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks you your reason for your hope. St. Peter wrote that first letter near the end of his life, somewhere they think around 65 AD. The Roman culture at that time was really unfriendly toward Christians. In July of 64, 1 year earlier, a great fire had occurred in Rome, and the Christians became the scapegoats for that Rome's burning. A great persecution then began in the empire. Jesus' followers lived with a constant physical and emotional duress under that persecution. And so St. Peter wrote them this letter. He wrote them to give them hope. He didn't want them to become bitter and renounce their faith because of these persecutions. And so he exhorts them, have a ready answer if someone asks you why you have hope, why you believe. Protestant minister Bill Palmer tells a story of a conversation he had with his high school friend Jack. Jack had been offered a job teaching guitar lessons at a local music store. It was really good pay for a high school student. And so one day after track practice, sitting on the bleachers, Bill asked Jack how the job was going. Well, Jack explained that he never took the job because he was a Christian and he would have to work on Sundays, and that was against his religion. And so for 45 minutes or so, as they waited for their parents to pick them up, Bill asked Jack question after question after question about his faith. Jack answered all of them. Now, Bill would have identified himself at that time as a Christian. He had been baptized as a young boy. He believed in Jesus. He believed in God. But he never went to church. He never practiced his faith. And he was really impressed by the answers that Jack was giving him that day. And it made him stop and think. Now, Jack wasn't preaching to him. He wasn't browbeating him. He was simply articulate in being able to answer Bill's questions. Always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks you for a reason for your hope. And then St. Peter adds this, but do it with gentleness and patience. Peter can say this because he experienced it. After Peter denied Jesus 3 times in the garden, after he hid from Jesus during his trial, after he runs away from Jesus when he's crucified, when Jesus comes back after the resurrection, he has breakfast with the 12. And then he pulls Peter aside so as to not embarrass him. and he asked him 3 times, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" With gentleness and patience, Jesus invites Peter back into relationship with him. I've seen people try to persuade others to the faith using guilt. If you don't do this, you'll be damned to hell. I've seen people try to persuade others to the faith with threats. If you do this or this, then I'm going to do this or this. That's not what St. Peter admonishes us to do today. He said this, "Always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks you the reason for your hope, but do it with gentleness and patience." Always be ready. Have the right attitude. Do it with gentleness and patience. And then be prepared to see God's work. Let me go back for a moment to the story of Bill and Jack. Several years after that conversation on the bleachers, after Bill had given himself over to God and was a truly committed Christian, he looked Jack up and took him out for coffee. Bill explained to Jack the impression that he had made him that day on the bleachers because of his commitment to the faith and because he was able to answer his questions. Now, Jack was genuinely surprised. In fact, he thought he had had the opposite effect on Bill. He said that he thought that he had turned Bill off because all the questions Bill asked seemed to be ridiculing him for his belief. My friends, sometimes that's how God works. In our interactions with non-believers, we may not ever see the impact that we have. Perhaps it seems as though the way we live and the answers we give make no difference at all to the people around us, except that maybe they think we're a little bit odd. But our perception does not change the fact that we are called to be salt to an unsavory world, and we are called to be light in the darkness. Now, last week, Father Ronald used this picture in his homily. I want you to take a look at that picture again, and he asked you the question, if that pool represents faith, where are you in that picture? And so he asked you that question last week, and I want to take it a little bit farther, all right? All right, just a show of hands, and don't be embarrassed by wherever you are because it's where you are, and it's okay. How many of you feel like right now you're in the pool rather than outside the pool? How many feel like that's where you are right now? Okay, how many feel like you're outside the pool somewhere, one of those pictures outside the pool? Okay, good. All right, now here's the question. Are you happy with wherever you are in that picture? Is that where you want to be? Because if you're on the outside, but you'd rather be in the pool, in that pool of faith, if you're on the outside but want to be in, what needs to be true for you to get there that's not true today? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. What needs to be true that's not true that's going to get me more deeper into my faith? Or maybe you're at the shallow end, but you want to be in the deep end. What needs to be true for you to get there? So that's the first question I want you to think about and reflect on this week. Now, St. Peter says, always be ready to offer an explanation to anyone who asks you the reason for your hope. So I want to ask you, why are you Catholic? Why are you Christian? And I'd like some answers to that. So those of you brave enough, why are you Catholic?
I'm Catholic and my parents raised me Catholic.
Because my parents raised me Catholic. Okay, now, can I pick on you a little bit? Okay, good. All right. You're a brave girl for first of all, answering, and then secondly, for letting me pick on you a little bit. Is it enough that you have the faith of your parents? You think so right now? Is it going to be enough when you're an adult? Because your parents won't be in charge of you then. Or do you have to make the faith your own? You have to make your faith your own. A lot of us in this church, and I'm saying how old are you?
I'm
12. Not 12-year-olds, but I think there are a lot of adults who are Catholic because that's the faith their parents raised them in, and they've never really adopted it as their own. I would bet that there are people in this church right now who are inside shaking their head say, yeah, that's kind of me, all right? Somewhere along the line, we have to make that faith our own. Otherwise, when you say to someone as an adult, oh, I'm Catholic because my parents raised me Catholic, and they say, well, okay, what good is that? All right? We have to be able to give an explanation for our reason for our hope, not my parents' reason for my hope. Thank you very much. That was very brave. Other people, why are you Catholic?
Because this is like home. This is my family.
This is home. This is my family. This is where I belong. All right? Good. Other reasons? Because of the Catholic beliefs. What, can you name a couple specific ones? Probably not, okay? Always be ready to give an explanation. Thank you for that. Because if you ever get encountered with a non-believer and you're not able to at least minimally answer their questions, what marketing people call the elevator speech, you know, when somebody asks you what your business does, you're able to explain it in a couple of sentences. All right, this is what we're getting at, and this is what St. Peter is getting at. Somebody had a hand up over here.
It's good to know that someone's upstairs looking after all of us.
It's good to know that there's somebody upstairs looking after all of us, okay?
It makes me whole.
It makes me whole, all right? And why? How does it make you whole?
It makes this crazy world make sense.
It makes this, I like that. It makes this crazy world make sense.
I think I'm supposed to be here.
I think I'm supposed to be here. It's where God, somebody said at the last Mass, God called me here, all right? I tell people all the time, I'm Catholic because of the Eucharist. Because I believe Jesus' words, do this in memory of me. I believe what he said in John's Gospel where he says, I am the bread of life. And he says it 5 or 6 different ways in one chapter of John's Gospel and says, unless you eat this bread and drink this blood, you don't have life within you. So that's why I'm Catholic. That's my elevator speech whenever anyone asks you. Here's the assignment for this week. I want you to think about the pool and where you are in that picture. And I'll try to get somebody to put that picture up on our website so you can go back and look at it. Thank you, Katie. And then secondly, what's your elevator speech? If someone were to ask you your reason for hope, can you articulate that? And if not, begin to find a way to articulate. St. Peter says, always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks your reason for your hope.